All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us for our Aveda Global Virtual Learning with Ricardo this evening. My name is Kyle Miner. I'm with the Aveda Show team, and I'll be facilitating today's call and taking you through the webinar with Ricardo. So at Aveda, we know that we start every event with the Aveda mission. Tonight, I would love for you to just consider the Aveda mission and how it's impacting your day-to-day life right now in this kind of new chaotic world we're in. And then we will move on to the other thing that we start all events and meetings at Aveda with, and that is wellness. We are very, very lucky this evening to have Helga Hefner, our global educator for SPA, to join us with some words of wisdom in this chaotic time around breath. So without further ado, I'll let Helga take that away.
Hello and welcome to your moment of wellness. My name is Helga Hefner and we're going to do some deep breathing together. So go ahead and close your eyes and take a nice deep breath. Inhale through the nose, as big a breath as you can. Exhale through your mouth. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Inhale again through the nose. Nice big deep breath. Get as much oxygen in there as you can and blow it out and exhale. Let it go with all your tension and stress. And once again, nice big inhalation and a nice long exhalation. Good job, everyone. Make sure to continue to breathe deeply and fully as you go through your day. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Until then, be safe and be well.
Fantastic. It's so nice to have Helga around to be with us in days like this. I am going to turn it over to Ricardo in just a moment, but just a reminder, for questions about his content tonight, please put those in the Q&A field. Anything else that you guys want to chat about between participants or with myself, please feel free to use the chat. Q&A for questions, chat for chat. With that said, I am going to turn it over to Ricardo. Ricardo, what do you have in store for us tonight?
Okay, so hello guys, and I'm here in New York in my home, and it's a pleasure to be with you guys, so thank you for tuning in. And if you were on some of the earlier sessions and you're now tuning back in again, thank you so much for the amazing feedback and all the love. So thank you so much. And you know, this is really just about us giving back right now, and possibly to give you a moment or a place to go for inspiration and even possibly a little bit of a distraction right now from what's going on. You know, this morning, the first two sections, what we've done is we've just done this layered bob, and we're going to be repeating that. So this really gives you a great opportunity if you take the morning session to then follow up in the afternoon, and you can kind of see how the whole cut comes together. And some of you have actually sent in your finished results to me as well. Beautifully done. So you're making me super proud. So thank you so much. So the haircut that we have planned for you today is like, and I wanted to do it because it's really cool to watch. It's got lots of interesting things, and sort of each aspect of the cut is something that you can sort of borrow and take and put somewhere else. So I love that. And all the components kind of come together to create this very sort of seamless, overly layered. It's kind of like a shag bob. If you comb it out, it can be very, very smooth and sleek. It's got lots of movement. It's great for different textures of hair. Of course, you've got to, you know, vary the technique and sometimes the sectioning a little bit, but not by much, okay? So the sectioning that we have to work with today, this is my mannequin head. So we'll actually start through the top area, which I think is probably going to be the best place for you to kind of see what we've done here. So here's the front part of her head. So what we've got is we've got a square happening through the very top part, and the square runs just to the apex of the head. Okay, so not like a horseshoe where it goes all the way around. We're starting up and stopping that section much higher. So you can see that from sort of profile perspective. And then what we've done is through the sides, just below that on both sides, we've got these little rectangular panels, okay, or sections. And then you can see that where that stops, literally in line with the square through the top. And then if we just look into the back, we can see that section just continues going all the way into the center back. And then what we've done is we've added these 2 triangles, okay? And that really just encompasses sort of like starting at the apex and really ending at the end of the crown there, okay? And then we have 2 other sections just before we begin, and we're actually going to be starting in the nape. So here I've got these 2 diagonal sections taken on both sides here, okay? So this is the sectioning pattern all the way around the head. Today is going to be a start to finish cut, so there'll be no stopping and editing in between. I'll be cutting it and then I'll blow dry it. I'll go through a flat iron and you'll actually see me doing some refining, and I'll give you guys some good tips on texturizing and refining as well, okay? So I'm gonna pop this head onto a stand. Okay. And yeah, Kyle was saying that we had lots of great questions, and there's no dumb questions, guys, so please ask away. I might not have the answer to all of your questions, but I will do my best in answering them the most honest and best I can. So I really chose this haircut just because I think, you know, you'll probably have a lot of people kind of coming out with some pretty grown out hair. And I know a lot of people have also been taking scissors to their hair as well. I personally believe that this is going to bring out a very, very creative place for people to play. I don't know if you guys have seen people cutting their own bangs and stuff like that. I'm sure you have. It's kind of interesting to see, you know, people who are really fearful of getting haircuts are now taking the scissors to the head themselves. How are we in frame there, Kyle?
Yep, sorry, I was in mute. We could, yeah, that's great.
All right. So I do have the head slightly forward, and we had a lot of questions about, do I move the head a lot? I totally move the head a lot. I'm always really moving the head away from the area that I'm working on. So right now I'm going to be starting through the back. You know, and typically with sort of layered or sort of graduated bobs, we generally approach this area with more of a graduated fashion, building up a lot of weight. And typically what tends to happen is the whole top area tends to get really heavy, and you don't get a lot of movement. So I want to sort of change the structure of the technique that we're doing, but I want the result to kind of be similar to that. So instead of using graduation to build, what I'm actually going to be doing is incorporating some layering in this area to really flatten that area out. And then as I work through the sides, you're going to kind of see me going through and almost combining techniques while I'll go from a layer through here, a little bit of graduation through here, and then you're going to see these concave layers happening through the sides. Okay? So we're going to start off just with a vertical section right through the center back. All right. We're going to pull that section out at about a 90-degree, and then what we're going to do, this is quite a shorter haircut, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to lift it just a touch through the bottom. And that added weight is just going to really help out when you're working the outline. So this is great if you're looking at doing something where you want to do something softer. You may have irregular growth patterns or cowlicks where you would need some added weight, but you still want to go for that sort of graduated effect or that sort of layered bob look. What's nice about this is because of all that weight that's sitting through the bottom, the weight just helps to make sure that the outline doesn't get too crazy on you. It keeps it kind of more static. And it's just a really good aid in allowing you to do something different with your outline, because most of the time, what happens when you're graduating is that the outline becomes whatever its natural growth pattern is. So this really helps with controlling that and really able to just kind of create different types of outlines, okay? So each section I'm going to be taking here, I'm just going to work to the previous. And the main thing is that when my guide gets to the round of the head or the mastoid process, right? So that ball that sits right behind the ear, what's going to happen is my guide line right at this point now becomes stationary. So I'm not over directing the section back and towards the center. What I'm doing now is I'm going to stop allowing it to move and round through the side of the head. What I'm actually trying to do is build up that wall through the back. So again, instead of curving around that section, I'm going to bring these guys back in order to retain more weight and length, which is really going to be a helpful aid when I start to approach the side outline. Okay, so this is the finished result right now on just the one side. So you can see it kind of leaves it quite soft. See if I can bring that camera in a bit closer. Okay. So now we're just gonna go ahead and cut the other side. Let me know if I'm not in frame. So when I cut the second side, I'm just gonna tilt the head just off. Okay. And here, as we start to approach it, I'm just gonna start up from the top area instead of grabbing the entire section. Okay. And this is really the correct and proper way to cut that second side. And the main thing, especially with palm to palm, is to always understand that you totally need to switch your palm position. Okay? Not only for consistency, it's actually really the correct way. And every time you don't do that, you're robbing yourself of gaining control on that second side. I think it's so important for us to understand that, you know, anytime you're cutting hair, what you're really trying to do is, you know, educate yourself on how you're going to cut the second side and make it look the same. Okay.
Hey, Ricardo, what kind of comb are you using?
This is a YS Park comb. I'm not even sure the number, to be honest with you. Can't even see. There's probably some guys on the call here that use similar calls who might be able to say what number of comb this is. But it's kind of like the YS Park, and it's sort of finer and wider. And it's got this little hook thing that's always cool.
And the inevitable shears question just came up.
So I've got lots of different scissors. The ones I'm using right now, guys, aren't actually that sharp. They're my old Vidal Sassoon shears. I used to be an instructor there, as well as a creative director. But yeah, so they're a great one to use in situations like this, where you can cut. You know, if I get my finger, they really won't take any skin off. But my favorite shears are my Hikaris. I was actually given a really great pair of shears actually by Van Michael as well. They've got some nice scissors happening as well. Okay. So I'm just going through and just cross-checking and not really removing much in the panel. Okay. But just want to make sure that we get that all right before we move on. Okay. So the other important thing, you know, I always like to point out when I'm teaching is I like for, you know, each component to kind of be its own thing, even though it all comes together in a haircut. You know, you may not like the end result, and that's okay. But, you know, what I always encourage people is when you're watching to sort of pick out the pieces that you think you can work with or use on a client, like immediately. Like you could use this whole layered back with like a pixie cut or something short. So kind of always pay attention to those things, because there's always something that you can take from the cut that you can use somewhere else. And I've always felt that, you know, all my haircuts are really just a sort of mix and match of different things that I've learned over the years. Okay. So I'm just going to go through this next panel here. Okay. So now that I've completed that one section, I now just drop that other panel, okay? And what we're gonna do is we're going to start right through the center back, okay? We're gonna take a vertical section, All right. And when I take this section out, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to graduate it ever so slightly. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little extra length and weight on that section. And you want to do that because essentially what you're now starting to approach is the area of the head where it then starts to recede and work away. You know, and the thing is when you do that section, you want to add a little bit of length, otherwise it could shrink and then the head could get really flat. And you're always looking at providing, you know, a rounder shape or something contoured that way so that when these sections get layered and disconnected over top, they'll really hug the head and will look much more natural, almost like it's not been disconnected. Okay? So my next section here, question?
Yeah, are you able to show the back of the mannequin head for just a moment? A couple of questions came in about the back.
Okay. So this is where I'm at right now. So I've just taken that first. I've connected with my guide. I'm now taking my diagonal section here. Right. Any questions yet? No?
We just have one more quick question from Cassandra. Does bringing your fingers out on the bottom panel help to collapse the bottom section a little before you start to build the weight in the middle section?
Sorry, can you read that?
Yep.
I think I understand it, but I want to be certain here.
Yep, no problem. Does bringing your fingers out on the bottom panel help collapse that bottom section before you start to build weight in the middle section?
I don't think it collapses it. I actually think that extra bit of length will help to support. So it's not doing that and collapsing. And actually what you don't want to get is the flick. If the flick is happening, what's happening is this shape through here is collapsing. So you want to think that when you see that very first section being cut, you want to know that that last layer of length that's sitting there rests almost vertically rather than starting to flick out. If it's flicking out, you're totally right, Cassandra, it is collapsing. You actually don't want that. Okay? So if this starts to flick out, what's happening is this is now too short. This is now too long, and what you're going to end up doing is getting rid of all that length. You want to have some sort of softness in there, so you want to be very wary. If there's too much length in there and you end up cutting that off, it'll sort of like take away all the really nice layer that you've put in there. Great question, though.
And then one last question before I let you continue. Are you establishing a new guide or connecting to the previous bottom section?
Excellent question. So I have not established a new guide, but I'm just about to, okay? So my very first section connected, second one connected. As I get to my third one right now, okay, I'm now starting to get into that area. You can see where that hair is now going to be living in the outline. Okay, so this section right through here, we're now going to disconnect this bottom portion from what's happening here, right? So just watch. We're going to take that section. Okay, up until this point, we've been working palm to palm, and we've been just over-directing to the previous, okay? So now what I need to do is I'm gonna work on top of my fingers. I'm gonna grab that section. Right on top here, okay, there's that shorter guideline. I'm gonna keep that right at the end of my finger here, okay? So we take that entire section, we're gonna lift that section back and up until our fingers are square, right, with the back part of the head, and our elevation is parallel with our section right through here. And now we're going to go ahead and cut. And so by lifting that section so high up, what's actually happening is we're dropping length on top of what we've just previously cut. Now, because both sections are essentially layered, what's happening is that those two panels, there's no weight to sort of fight against each other. So they just lay almost like you kind of texturize the panel. There's nothing loose about it. It actually almost feels connected. Okay? That now becomes a stationary guide. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these diagonals moving forward. Okay? And I'll do that again. I'm going to take that section. Okay? So I'm pulling back to where the head rounds, or to the corner of that hairline is a good way to think of it. Okay? I'm going to take my fingers. I'm going to work on top of my fingers. And again, I'm holding that guideline at the very end here. Take that section, lots of tension, pull up and back. You don't have to exaggerate the move, okay? So you don't need to pull it into the next room. But that lift alone, you can see how much weight and length it's giving you as you move forward, okay? That's gonna be more than enough. In fact, what I end up doing is refining quite a bit of the length as I move forward. Let's get rid of some of these knots here. Okay. So I'm just gonna go ahead, take that section, we're gonna come back, work on top of my fingers, lift it back and up. Okay. It's like a real great trick in understanding, you know, these breaking points between the back part of the head and the side. And essentially what's really amazing about these two areas, right, is that whatever you're doing, whatever you've been taught to do, you always have to think, you always have to come up with a technique that bridges these two areas because of the lack of hair that runs through the front. So I love, you know, that always through the side, if you ever think about, you know, places that you can really be creative, you know, these areas through the sides is a great place, you know, to look at what else could you be doing in this area besides just always going, you know, one length. Okay? So, yeah.
Was the third section a stationary guide then?
Yes.
Great.
Well, the third, depending on the size of your head. So maybe the fourth and maybe the fifth. But really what you got to think about is wherever the round of the head actually starts. And the reason that area is so important is because that's the place where the hairline stops. So even on, like, you know, on your clients, you have to think like, you know, the mannequin, the hair sewn in there. But on people, you know, the hole, people think comes from the ear. The hole actually starts wherever the hairline starts to jump up from that point. So when you think about where you want to be setting up in order to fill in the gaps, right, you have to be thinking always about the round part of the head. Okay. And again, there's extra length here that I actually don't need. So I'm just going to lift that up again and just remove a touch more there. Okay. And now we'll save the rest of that for once the hair is dry. Okay, so I'm going to do that on the opposite side now. Same thing, just reversing my hand position a little bit to keep the result consistent. Okay.
While you're setting that one up, Ricardo, does your elevation change on the side or stay the same?
Changes on the side. So the elevation and the sectioning completely change. You're going from, you know, vertical to diagonal almost to like a horizontal, which is really building the most amount of weight there. Great questions.
And then one last question, and I'm sure you're going to get to this, but I'm just going to ask it since it's here. How do you make sure there won't be a hole where the ear is?
There is a hole right now. Okay? There's a slight hole where the ear is right now. Okay. Show you guys. Holes aren't really, you shouldn't be like too freaked out about, but you can actually see. Can you see the little jump there? Can you see the little, it kind of goes, boop. There's like a little jump there, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it because I still have to go through and cut my outline. So if it's something that I feel like I need to do right now, I can go back through and do that now. I could also cut a line and go back through and layer that. It's going to feel more blunt, you know, but the hole is a problem when you're trying to really do something one length or possibly even graduation, you know, an uncontrolled hole where it's a big gap. But for something like this, you can see I'm going to want to get rid of some of that. I'm going to want to get rid of some of that. So I've actually still got a lot of good area to play with there. Okay. So you are going to go ahead and get a hole. How do you minimize the hole and how do you get the right kind of hole is just by making sure where you start to pull back. So imagine, you know, as I start to approach this section, if on one side I choose this point to now start to pull back in order to gain length, what's going to happen is, yes, it's going to be drastically short there. And that is going to be a hole that you're not going to want to see. In fact, I wouldn't even call that a hole. I would just call it a mistake. Okay. So as we start to approach the second side, again, just over directing to the previous. We're adding a touch of a little angle there just to help to build. Okay, we get a nice little head shape there. And each time I take a diagonal section, I'm trying to be really mindful of where that hair in that section lives. Is it the one that is in the outline, or is it the one that's just sitting in the back here, okay? So now, again, we're right at that point where the head rounds right from that corner, so we're just gonna take that section, it's gonna go right into the hairline here. We just clip that cleanly away, okay? And now we're gonna take that section, okay? And so on this side, you're gonna have to come with your fingers on top of the head. So we're gonna take that section, we're gonna pull the section back just until our fingers square off, and then you can hold your breath as you cut this section, okay? Just kidding. Okay, and I always end up leaving one hair, so we're just gonna come back through again and take that guy away. All right. And so we're gonna take that section, come in on top of our fingers, lift, and really the closer you get to where that section lives, the greater your tension is gonna be. Hope you guys are sitting at home with a glass of wine, watching me cut hair. I wanted to, but Kyle said I wasn't allowed.
That's right. We're just jealous of everybody sitting at home with a glass of wine because we're still working.
They're at home, yeah, they're totally enjoying themselves. I hope you guys enjoy yourselves at least. Okay, and then we're just gonna take that last section back and up. Okay, so quite good with the results on both sides there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down this guy right through here. Okay. I'm now going to layer this guy and connect him with our guideline. So we have a guideline happening right behind the ear for that section that we pulled. How's that? Is that better? All right. So we're going to take vertical sections at this point. Okay. And so remember that weird move that you were doing back here. If you take that section now and just come hold it vertically, you've got a nice little clean guideline there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these guys, right? And essentially this section right behind here has been cut with the length to support the outline, right? So at this point, as long as I pull it back to the same spot and layer the existing hair now on top of that, I won't lose my outline, but what will I've done, I will have added another layer on top of my outline.
Hey, Ricardo, is there a good way to check while cutting that your elevation is equal on both sides for even length?
You can lift your guides after you've lifted. So imagine you can do something like that where you lift them to see if they're even, then cut them the same. That's a good one. Check your elevation in the mirror. That's always a nice one as well. You know, the thing about elevation is it's very visual. Obviously, you're using the head as a reference, but when you do it, you're kind of like looking at those angles. And a good little key point here is just to kind of look at like the stretch of the section as you do it, you know, and pay attention to the the high points of the head. You know, as you start to drag these sections down, what's going to happen is you're going to end up building more weight as opposed to removing it. Okay, so this is where we're at right now. And just with the little extra length there, I'm just going to save myself a little bit of time in refining. I'm just kind of pulling those guys back a little bit and just losing just some of those edges there. Okay, just to help to sort of speed the process up, especially when we dry. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the opposite side. And so when we're cutting the second side, you're probably going to find it a little easier to stand in front and to comb away from yourself as you do it. So just comb that out. Okay. Right. So we're going to just, you want to kind of just be standing off to the side. Okay, and again, we're just going to take these sections vertically. We're going to comb away from ourselves on this side. We're going to lift our section up and then just go ahead and cut. Okay. So just like the other side, we'll just come through and let's just lose.
Ricardo, are those subsections straight or are they slightly angled?
They were straight from what I could see. Okay. Just vertical sections, all moving to a stationary guide. Okay. So let's pop into the back now. Let's take our two panels down. We can start to lose some of our clips here. So, you know, with these two panels, I've done this haircut a lot on clients, and I used to sometimes just like leave this panel completely out and kind of blow dry the whole thing and just go through it dry and sort of texturize it. But that's, you know, that's an option, completely up to you. Okay. So I'll show you kind of what we're trying to get with the result here. So we want a disconnected panel now to sit on top of what we've cut on the underneath. All right. So when you're looking at this panel and how much length you're going to take off and leave, you want to think about that extra length kind of just sitting in and around the occipital bone, so there's not like this super obvious disconnection. So just about leaving it just a little bit longer to make sure that all the layering sort of sits without any weight lines. Okay. So when we do this, we can actually just lift that at a 90 degree, and then you can kind of just bring our fingers down just to kind of more or less feel for how much has to come off. You know, and anytime I cut my very first section, it's a guess, right? So I generally would go a little longer rather than shorter, just to kind of look to see what I'm getting and look to see how that hair is resting against the head. Okay, I'm just gonna take that guy just a touch shorter, just through that top area, so it feels a little lighter. Okay. Now each section that I'm going to take here, I'm going to just over direct to the previous. Okay. And really what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to get myself just to a finished place where I can blow dry it. And then I want to flat iron it And really the magic happens kind of in some of the texturizing, because when you have disconnection like this, you're essentially waiting for those two panels to kind of get lightened up a little bit. And what starts to happen is this kind of like this really beautiful marriage between the two of them. And it's great because you can kind of see this haircut, even though you've taken all these different sections and components, they all sort of start to come together.
Hey, Ricardo. If the client's hair was finer, would the top panel be larger?
Yeah, you could actually almost even approach this like with graduation, or do a much shorter version. If I was doing something with like this for finer hair and it was left at the length, you may find that the layers have almost taken too much weight. So just imagine that you would adjust everything. The bottom would probably be left a little longer. These sections would then get graduated, and you definitely want the outlines much shorter because it's just going to help her hair feel much fuller. Okay, great question, by the way. You know, always think about like your techniques and your cuts as like sizes. And when you think about the person that you would give it on, take into account their texture, take into account their density, and just give them the right size. So like finer hair generally needs a shorter size and a tighter size to make it look fuller and thicker, you know, and that's the opposite. So think about when you're, you know, varying the ideas, larger head, more length, you know, so you give it a slightly more grown out kind of effect. I think that's the best way to approach it without complicating it too much. There's never been something I've been like, oh, you can't have that. I do think that for this cut, the one I'd probably stay away with is the coarse textured one. And mainly just because the layering, you know, might look like it's caused damage in the hair just because of the way the ends open up. So as I'm layering through the second panel, you can see that I've actually not moved. I'm still standing on the same side. So now what I'm doing is combing the hair away from myself. And the essential point about this is like there's the right place with your hand position to be combing things away, and you'll just find that by having your fingers pointed down and your scissors connecting here, it's just going to give you a lot more control over what you're doing. Okay. So we're just coming all the way around the head now. Okay, we're essentially still pulling those sections back. And then just coming all the way around and making sure that nothing has been left out. Excuse me. Scared to cough these days. I'm going to assume that most of you are laughing on the phone right now, on the call, on your computer. Okay. So for
Hey, Ricardo.
Yep.
Would you move her in the chair?
Yeah, of course. Like my client?
Yeah.
Like the head? Is that the question?
Well, it doesn't say the head specifically. Amber, feel free to chime in with some more clarity, but the question just says, would you move her in the chair?
Yeah, like, would I move her in the, well, I don't know if I would move the chair, but I think, yeah, if this was a client, would I be moving her head? Absolutely.
Perfect. And then FYI, Lex did totally laugh at your joke. So.
Oh, good.
Oh, Amber clarified.
Jokes, guys. It's very important. I'm a very funny person.
Amber did clarify, while standing on the same side, would you move her while you're standing on the same side?
Would I move her? I would do it exactly the way I just did on the mannequin. So on the one side, I would stand behind and comb back, and on the other side, I would stand in front and comb away. So it's not really about moving her as much as I would move myself. I hope that clarifies.
I hope so too.
Okay, so here's the front part of the face, guys, in case you're unaware where we're at. Okay, I'm in frame here. So we've completed the back area, all right? And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our guideline from the back and we're going to work short to long. And then our sections are going to pivot all the way until we reach the center back here. Okay? So this haircut, you can move the parting around because of the layering. And each kind of time you move the parting, whether you tuck it, you know, and do that and move it, it kind of like, it's like the haircut keeps dressing itself and you kind of keep getting this other look. Okay. So it's you like someone had asked me, oh, does it work with the side part? It can totally work with the side part. But if you have someone who's really adamant about not moving their parting around, you know, you could section this slightly different and make it a little heavier and skip this area. But it really just depends. Okay. So we're going to start right from the back area and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to cut short to long. We're not going to get too exaggerated with how long we get to the front, because what I love about this cut is that when some of the bits are a little shorter in the front, it kind of already gives you this area where you can kind of go, right, I can start to see some of the shortness and I can use that as a guide to kind of create these like side sweeping fringes that can move from side to side. Okay. And so that's the first one. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we just have a question. Did you take your inspiration for this from the 5-point cut?
No.
Excellent. And then Cassandra's asking, so cut off their part line or off of the center part?
Yes. Okay. Or no parting.
And then we do have the question, we've gotten this in every single session. How long does this typically take you to do a cut like this in the salon?
Well, I get about an hour. I don't necessarily work like I did before, like when I was in Spain. And now I see a couple of people that I take care of here in New York. Some of them are models, so there's not always that like time restriction that you get behind the chair. But I would say, you know, an hour to 45 minutes, depending on your speed, you know, you can definitely bang this out. It just requires less talking and explaining. And then depending on the blow dry that you go for as well. Okay. I think to me, what takes me the longest isn't necessarily the wet version of the cut, it's the perfecting when it's dry. That to me is where I've never felt like officially done in that area, ever. In fact, probably one of my biggest pet peeves is like seeing my cuts in front of me. You know, when you like cut friends and stuff like that, they're kind of always there. And for me, I'm just like constantly observing what I could have done better. I'm sure you guys feel similar in that sense.
Ricardo.
Yep.
Tom is asking if it's a stationary part or do you increase the amount of over direction on the heavier side?
So no stationary part. Okay. So each section's just getting over directed to the previous. Big hello to Tom and hug to you, my friend. Hope all is well in Charlotte. Thanks for that question. So what's happening here? Here's the first one, right? And then we're taking, right, so here's the first one. We come up and cut. Second one, third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth, okay? And so each one is just being over directed to the previous. Okay. So we're here. Now we're going to be almost at the ear. And then that last guy right there, almost like where we started. The world of virtual cutting, guys. Okay, so that you literally end up back with a short to long in that last section at the crown. And as you can see, she's looking really shaggy right now. I've left one piece out, shame on me. So let's just go through. And that was because of Tom and Cassandra kind of asking the questions. Maybe break my concentration, so I've lost it. That was a joke, ha ha ha. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see, but I actually do like the curly version as well. She's looking kind of cool right now. All right, we're gonna do the second side, and then we're gonna have to get into a blow dry. You guys at that point can pour yourself another glass of wine and get to the refining stage. So as we cut the second side, just like we did through the back, we do not move in terms of standing on another side, right? So now what's gonna happen here is each time I take that new diagonal section, you'll see my body sort of moving back this way. So I'm starting here, and each section that I comb back away from myself, I'm sort of moving backwards in a clock in that fashion. Okay? Because you kind of need to keep in mind that, again, your guide at this point is in front of you. Okay? Stretch those guys out.
Ricardo, can you lift the camera up a little bit?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now you can see the bottom though, okay, guys?
Yep, we have to pick and choose between the
Gotta
top.
pick and choose. You know, we're gonna get to a point soon, guys, that we're gonna be putting on virtual glasses, and you literally step into a room, and it'll be like you'll be live in the classroom. So I look forward to this future. I think this was a really great and exciting opportunity for us to take a haircutting into the virtual world here. I think it's going to be amazing with the amount that we'll be able to share with people. I'm going to give her a little famous shake.
Hey, Ricardo, were you picking up the hair from the previous sections into the top layering you were cutting?
So whatever my previous guide was, yes, but nothing from the underneath, so it's still disconnected. Okay. This is the shape as is. Okay, actually not even bad, considering all the different type of layering that we've just done on it. Okay. And so we've got a disconnected panel happening here, slight disconnection happening through the sides. We then have this connected layer that sits on top of that, adding more fullness. And now we've just done literally a little concave layer that pivots all the way around the head. And really, this is now disconnected from what's sitting through the bottom here. Okay. So I want to do a straight version for you guys. So I'm going to just put in some smooth infusion style prep. Okay, I'm going to go for a wrap dry, so I'm going to go for something much smoother. You know, if you guys have seen the list of classes that's coming up, we've got lots of different things happening. Tomorrow we've got a great class. You guys got to check out Janelle. Wednesday we've got Ian. And on Thursday, we have Renee and B, both teaching at different time zones. And then, of course, the best for last, we have Helga on Fridays giving us some amazing wellness. Make sure you check out next week's class because I'm going to be doing a bowl cut. You know, this is a great opportunity for me to kind of like take you guys through some of my favorite cuts. And I never really get to demo, so this is a lot of fun. Okay.
Hey, Ricardo,
Yep.
why wouldn't you start at the top of the head section by the ear and pivot to the eyes so the length is more towards the front and not the ears?
Ask that question once more. I think I understood it.
Why wouldn't you start the top of the head section by the ear and pivot towards the eyes so the length is more towards the front and not the ears?
So I'm gonna see if I understand that. So start here and move upwards rather than start here and travel downwards.
That's how I'm reading it.
That how
Matt,
you're reading
feel
it?
free to chime in if there's more clarity.
Yeah. So you can totally do that. You can approach the pivot starting from here and coming up, except you're going to connect. You can't do that though. You can't connect and work up, but you're going to notice that the top is going to work into a point and is going to be much more top heavy rather than having a layer. You can absolutely do that. And that's a great way of thinking about how to transition and do something different. The difference will totally be that when you're approaching it from the top and working down, you're going to leave more fullness, allow for some slight more flatness because the layer is going to be shorter. Whereas if you do it the other way, you're going to end up building more fullness and more static through the top area. Okay? But both really beautiful. I hope that's
exactly what he was. That's exactly what he was wanting.
Yeah. Okay. So for the blow dry, I'm going to be using you might see me come off camera here once in a while because I'm constantly pushing it. So I'm going to be using a Denman brush, okay? And this is not your typical Denman brush. We had some questions about where you can get these. I got this from, I believe, from Hairbrained. So you can go to their HB Pro site and buy these things. They're really good brushes. They're my favorite. It's different from your typical Denman. You can see that the brush is almost the size of like a half round brush. So you notice there's a bit more of a bevel when you're blow drying with this. And then the bristles are thinner, so it makes it sort of easier to sort of glide through the hair. And this is like a really old-fashioned blow dry technique that I really like because I think it just makes the hair or the cut look really modern. So what essentially you're looking to do is to kind of like take the haircut that you've just done and sort of allow the head to help with the molding and the setting of it. And it's kind of like my favorite way to teach a client to sort of blow dry their hair because it doesn't actually require that much work in certain areas, especially through the back. Okay? So once we got that done, we're just going to sort of move through the panels, you know, and mannequin hair can be a little tough sometimes. So certain areas you'll see me working a little bit more. Essentially, the idea I'm trying to get to is I want to get it dry. I'm really focused on the root area and making sure that it's rounded and molded to the head rather than giving any sort of like weird flicks. And then I want to go through, I want to flat iron the hair, and then I want to do some texturizing and just quickly work through the outline. Okay, so as we start to dry in this area, you know, the key thing is focusing on this growth pattern. Okay? And so you're kind of like using that area just to get the right kind of kick. Okay? And just kind of see how that just allows the cut to sit. Right? And then as these sections get a little longer, I sometimes will just come through and we'll just kind of like very classic kind of leaping. So we're just really following just to the ends of the hair. Okay. And then, excuse me, just come through. Make sure that it's moving. And it's just kind of like ensuring that I'm really helping just to get rid of any parting that might be kind of like stuck in the hair. That's kind of like what we're getting just as a beginning result here, right? Now we'll just go ahead and start getting that second side. So kind of want to make sure that you've got a place to put that hair. So essentially, even though we're really focused on that back area, we want to kind of help to push that top area over in order to get the bottom to wrap up very easily. And you can just see anywhere where the hair is dried, we can just come back through and just add a little tension to that brush and just help get a more consistent result there. All right. Let's just get into some flat ironing. Any questions at home, guys?
Yep, we got a couple, Ricardo, and just a quick time check. You have about 25 minutes.
Okay, so we're gonna be under the gun now.
Perfect. I had to step away for a moment. Did you already talk about the Dyson blow dryer?
I did not talk about the Dyson blow dryer.
You got a few questions on if that was a Dyson, and what are your thoughts?
I like the Dyson, guys. I'm a Dyson fan. I like that it's quiet. That's kind of the main thing. I like the experience of blow drying with one, so that's kind of good. So yeah, I'm a fan.
Excellent. And then if you were to air dry this, what products would you use?
I mean, my favorite right now is anything in Nutriplenish. So depending on your texture, you could totally just put on some leave-on conditioner. You could use some Be Curly, would probably be fantastic. Texture Tonic, also a favorite for, air drying. I love the combination. Yeah. There's so many great options right now, so.
That's it for questions right now. So guys, don't forget, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. And then I did see this come up in chat a few times. We are recording these sessions, and we will be posting the finished video to PurePro. It'll take us a couple of days to get the videos loaded, but within 24 hours to 48 hours, the videos will be up, so you can watch them over and over and over again. Oh, and where you got the brush, Hairbrained, is it just a website, Ricardo?
Yeah, so if you go to, God, they're going to kill me if I don't know this, hairbrain.me, right? And then they've got the HB Pro, I believe it's called. And yeah, they've got great equipment and tools there. I personally like them. Gerard, who's actually a good friend of mine, is a hairdresser, and he only brings in good stuff that he himself would use. So that's kind of why I always like going there. It's in a hair.
And I have put that website in chats for everybody as well.
Say that once more.
I put that website in the chat.
Great. Tell them I sent you. Just kidding. You guys coping okay at home? I'm watching too much of the news, I hope.
Hey, Ricardo.
Yep.
Do you recommend always flat ironing for straight hair to refine it, the haircut?
It depends on the result you're going for, but even when you want it like really shaggy, yeah. I mean, the thing about like texturizing and point cutting, it's that the straighter the hair, one, it's going to your scissors are going to glide over anything, so it's just going to make that much smoother. The hair reads different when it's dry, so you're going to be able to see like lumps or weight. And if things are, textured or have like movement and flicked or just kind of just styled, really, it's really hard to tell what needs to stay and what needs to go. And I think that, just dry cutting itself, there's a talent and technique into just observing and looking at the hair and knowing this is going to work when it dries naturally and this is not going to work when it dries naturally. I think those are those two questions that you're always asking yourself. And never flat iron someone's hair with the understanding or an expectation that they are going to be doing that themselves. For me, it's like I need to stretch the hair out like I'm making my client a pair of jeans or a dress. So I need to give them the right size, the right fit. I need to make sure there isn't like weight sitting somewhere. I know this cut needs texturizing and needs to be opened up. Yeah.
On that note, Ricardo, how do you tell a guest that you need to smooth it out to refine it for their first day with this cut?
Just like that. Just like you said it. At the end of the day, you kind of have to understand that clients have been told everything. That's why I think it's so important to be really honest and truthful with your clients, because, when you get that lack of trust kind of statement, like, I prefer you not to do that, and you're kind of really trying to do something in their benefit, that becomes really tricky. If you don't think I've been in that same situation, I totally have. I sometimes think there's like techniques to just like waiting for your moment, and building on that focus and that trust with that client to get to the point where she's like, all right, you take over. And I worked with people for years, until they finally said, okay, I trust you, do your thing. And that sometimes just takes a long time. What I would say to you guys at home is, treat cases like they're cases. Don't put that belief or that expectation on every client. Because sometimes people are like, oh, my clients are crazy. Well, they're not all crazy. Some of them are, but they're not all crazy. So we all have tricky people. They've had tricky situations in their lives, probably had some really bad haircut or trusted a hairdresser once, and that just gave them the experience of a lifetime, and they're like, I'll never do that again. And sometimes those people end up in your chair. I think the hardest person I ever had, I remember a client literally told me that her last hairdresser threw the scissors on the ground and walked out. And I thought, before starting her, I thought, no way. Let me tell you, during that, it never happened, but it was tough. It was tough. And you're trying to meet someone's expectations. So it's always tough. That's why you could never underestimate the consultation. First impressions, all super important things into making sure your client does what you want them to do, or at least that they're hearing, and taking your advice. Because, just think about it. It's like, if you're looking a certain way or your work doesn't speak for itself, you kind of have to think about what are the things that are going to allow this person to visually read me, and that I strike confidence in them, that they know that I'm the person to cut your hair or to color or to style. Great question, guys.
Hey, Ricardo, what kind of flat iron are you using?
Diana the Hunter. Actually, I don't even know. It's called it's DH, Diana the Hunter Super Matrix 128. And the weirdest thing is it vibrates. I don't know why, but it has a feature on it that vibrates. Don't use that feature. Are you guys laughing on the phone? Oh, sorry, I keep thinking you're on a call because you're on your phones.
I don't know if he's laughing, but Tom has a great idea with you doing a consult and suitability class.
I would love that. Well, we actually do have a face shape class that I'm going to be doing with Janelle. All right, so do check this out, guys. The team has really put some fantastic ideas together, and they're really kind of just like a spectrum of different things, from color to wellness to beauty for the brain. So we've got all kinds of great things, makeup techniques, skincare. Okay, so almost, guys. It's got to be right. And just putting it out there, I know my menu's already created, but if there are certain things that you'd love to learn, like Tom just called that out, please write to me on Instagram, send me a little message. If there's something you'd really like to learn, let's see what I can do about it. Maybe I can incorporate it into one of my classes, and who knows, if these are really successful, I might just continue with them. So your feedback and participation is highly encouraged.
So, Ricardo, we got a great question. One I've been wondering about myself. How are you guys going to top worldhood for Congress?
Dude, we had it. We already have it, guys.
They have been meeting without me, everyone, and it's frustrating me to no end. But apparently, their new idea.
The idea is already there. It's fantastic. It's super cool. It's not World Hood, and that's all I can tell you guys because the rest of the team are killing me, basically. All right. I think we have a dry version here.
And just a quick time check, Ricardo, 15 minutes left.
Let's go to 20. What do I got to pay to get some extra time? All right, guys. All right. So let's see how much of this we can do for you. All right. So you can pretty much start anywhere in the refining process. Just to show you guys what it looks like right now. So I like to think about refining in terms of like space, right? So start in one area, that leads me to the next, and that one leads me to the one after that. So let's just come through.
So while you're doing that, Lacey has a flat iron that has the vibrate feature as well. And she says that it's supposed to help with the ions in the hair and it helps to smooth out more coarse hair.
That is awesome.
Interesting.
Switching blades, too dull. Right, these are the Van Michael ones. These are good. For those of you who are scissor geeks. Okay, so we can just come through. We can point cut the line if we wanted. We could also have gone for something much softer. We could have gone through and maybe like razored the edges of the hair before blow drying. That would have been a good one too. Just to get some nice kind of variation in the softness. All right. So just come through.
Ricardo, do you always do the perimeter last?
I actually like doing it first. Depends. It depends where my level of focus is or what's bothering me the most. I think a lot of things is emotional. You kind of see a hair, you're like, that's bothering me so much I can't even look at the next section until it's gone. And sometimes I feel like that, like it's like looking at like a dirty room or something. When you do cut a line, you got to really think that it's just a bunch of little techniques put together. Okay. I'm just going to move little hair there. Okay. And the truth is, guys, if you've ever seen me at a show doing this stuff, hours to perfect it. Okay, so it's far from being perfect. I'll tell you what I do like to do. See this guy in here? So you come in this way. You can kind of come in and really create that like Instagram shot. Sometimes we forget that we should also pay attention to the internal part of our outline as well, okay? So you like those clean, really clean shots. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're just gonna do a little texturizing to break this up. So we'll just come through the top here. I'm gonna drop the outline away. And my main point just about point cutting here, right, is to sort of think about the hair in its sort of 3D form.
You gonna move the camera, Ricardo?
See,
there you go.
I'm actually gonna just kind of come out a little wider. You don't see that much of me. There we go. Okay. So, especially with something like this, right, where there's just like small little edges and corners keeping the disconnection in place. So you want to avoid, and that's for a lot of texturizing, avoid coming at the hair really vertically, right? So you kind of come at it in a more horizontal way. And what that does is it kind of gives you a much sort of like even flow to how the texturizing sits, or how that weight removal sits, okay? So you want to use like your point cutting in order to create more lift and movement. And then we want to use like our slicing technique. And here we'll do a little bit where we slice back away from the front part of the face. And this is great for refining and defining. So when you want to like really create, you know, that one specific section, maybe you've got color sitting in this area, that's a great way to kind of approach those panels as you work in. Okay. And then each time we come through, there's always something else to clean on that line. And then another thing I love doing, especially with a cut like this, okay, is these layers that we have happening through the top. As you comb them forward, you can kind of see there's like a fringe just waiting to happen in there, okay? So it's very shaggy and very piecey. So you could do this on both sides. I do just like opening it on the one. So say this is where her parting is. We're just gonna take a diagonal section. There's a couple different ways that you could do this, okay? One, you can take your guide from here if you don't want to slice, right? You take your guide from there. You can use the tips of the scissors, and as you cut, you can slowly just move across the front part of the face, and it will just give you some added pieces there. Okay. Is that looking a little dark in there, Kyle?
Not bad. It's a little dark, but not bad.
Apologies, guys, we're losing the light here. All right, so that's one way you can approach it. I also just love picking it up. I'm gonna work off that shorter panel through there. And what I'm gonna do is just come in and just slice into the hair and just allow the blades, not to completely cut, but just sort of glide and create smaller pieces. So it's gonna be super soft in terms of the fringe. Okay. Also a great way, you know, if you're like trying to highlight color and stuff like that, okay? And then what's great is the edges, because they're softer now, you can start to see even just with like, you know, the little movements of your fingers, you can start to get that hair coming off. And then there's this really beautiful movement that now starts to happen just through this side as it starts to sort of kick out. So I love that, because essentially, you know, it does feel like a slightly kind of 90s kind of haircut. It's a little sort of rock and roll. So I love as well. And I think that there's just something really sort of beautiful about shapes like this. Okay.
Ricardo, you have Thomas standing and clapping in sweatpants.
That's awesome. I don't know if I want to see that. And then we'll just refine.
Lots of great comments coming in. The tips.
Little edges. Okay. And then I haven't really texturized this as much as I would like. Guys, do try this one at home. I'm showing you guys my favorite cuts, really. And this is a great one to like pull out and use on people, you know, because the movement's really, really beautiful. So I'm just finishing up now, guys. If you guys have any questions, please just go ahead and ask, and just look and see all that really great movement, even up through that top. I'm going to do my famous shake it out a little bit. Okay. Now, and all it takes is just a couple movements with your hands just to create some nice texture. That's going to be fantastic for clients. Okay.
So
Nice.
Ricardo, you basically did an undercut with layers, is that correct?
Did a disconnected layered bob. There's no undercut. An undercut's generally referred to as like a much shorter panel. So if it was if you guys check on my bowl cut next week, you're going to see an undercut where it's actually shorter on the underneath, and it's taken in much more extreme. And then there's length actually left on top. Whereas when you're looking at like layered panels just sitting on top, this is generally just referred to as disconnection. It's an undercut, but it's not undercut as a technical term, but where you've literally taken the underneath off.
Can you show the back of the mannequin head real quick? And while you're doing that, the question, does the mannequin really have that much hair, or is the cut just that good?
The mannequin's pretty full, but I'll defer to the cut being that good.
And then one last question about your scissors. You're using your Sassoon scissors today, but you like Hikari, correct?
I'll show you my my weapons of choice. Like a lot of the cuts on Instagram, this is the choice. This is what I primarily cut my clients with, and my bobs. I used this one at Congress for some reason. I was feeling confident that day. Actually, no, I used a different scissor that was also very sharp. I generally you don't see me using these like on stage, maybe to cut a fringe. They're so sharp that this is not like a toy to like be playing around with and not, be really focused. When this guy cuts, it cuts. These are the Van Michael scissors. Fantastic. Really great. Nice little feel, pointy edges. Great scissor. My Sassoon scissors, which have been with me for years. I have like 10 pairs of those, I think. And they're the old Kokoro scissors. I don't know if if they discontinued them, but they're literally modeled after a brand called Kokoro. Again, I always tell people that a scissor should feel like a running shoe or like the right pair of pants. It's for me, it's fit. The most important thing is fit, how it feels in my hands, and I know when I pick up a scissor, I'm like, I can do my job with this. So just go on that. I personally think Japanese steel is preferable. It's a little bit more fragile. So if you're still in a stage where you're dropping your shears, there's great American steel like Joel is a great company that makes some pretty decent scissors. I love Hikari. Wings are really great. Matsuzaki's are fantastic scissors at an excellent price point. Okay, any other questions?
That is it.
Okay, guys, tune in tomorrow to check out Janelle. You got Ian Michael Black on Wednesday, and you have Renee and Bean Carmichael all the way from Scotland teaching styling, and Renee here in New York teaching you some curly stuff. Lots of great content coming out. Do check us out. Follow along this week. DM us on our Instagrams, and I'll see you guys next week for the bowl cut.
All right. Thank you all. And again, check out Pure Pro in a couple of days for the videos from today's session. And hopefully I'll come back tomorrow with Janelle.